I used to get called Rihanna. And I'm like, are you blind? Hi guys, welcome to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about the realities of traveling while black. If you're new here, my name is Adele and I help people grow and explore and connect through travel. It's one of my biggest passions, and I've noticed that one of the things that stops a lot of black women from traveling is wondering what it's going to be like for them in a new country, whether people are racist, whether it's intimidating, whether people will be friendly or not. So today I'm going to talk about my own experiences as someone who is clearly black, Nigerian, African. I was born in England and I have lived across different parts of the world. Currently I live in the Middle East, I live in Dubai, I have lived in Colombia, I've lived in Paris, and I also travel a lot. This is not to like brag or anything, but just give you context of my background. I'm used to being like the only black in the village. I'm used to being like one of two or three black people in dominantly Caucasian environment or international environment. But generally, when people ask me what it's like to travel as a black woman, they generally want to know if it's friendly, if it's safe and whatnot, and what it's like. So basically, this video is going to tell you some of the most common things I've noticed in my years of traveling abroad and going to foreign environments. The first is that people will stare a lot. It can be quite awkward, especially when you are somewhere where you are clearly standing out. For me, places like China, where one, I'm tall, I'm 5'10", I'm black, and I have big hair. And one thing you need to realize is that a lot of people are looking at you out of curiosity as opposed to racism or something more with a negative slant. And that's something that I had to really think about as well and observe, because I noticed that once I caught someone's eye staring at me, if I smiled, generally they looked really sheepish or smiled back or then got the courage to ask me for a photo. Yes.
Oh,
So what's your name?
is this a video? Digna, I love your hair! I want to be your friend! I love you!
Woo! Love you too.
You're pretty!
Thank you. Yes, it can be quite annoying, but sometimes it's actually really funny. For example, I went to the rice fields in Bali and like this family who looked a bit Arab, but they were super excited and I don't know who they thought I was, but they didn't speak English, I didn't speak their language. And they're like, please, can you sign this thing? And I know they were asking me to sign something because they came with a notepad or something. So I was like, okay, if you want me to sign, I sign it. And the mother was like, thank you. And the kid that was with them was super excited. I don't know who they thought I was, but if I made them happy for the day, then hey. I will say that in some countries or some cities, the staring has been really uncomfortable. For example, I have a really like touchy feeling about Madrid because I hated it there. People stared so much and their behavior was really off-putting. And I noticed that that was mostly with the older generation. So for example, we'd go to a restaurant and I traveled with a bunch of like my friends, and there was I think about 5 or 6 of us, all mixed, full black, we had white, but mostly like ethnic backgrounds. We'd walk into somewhere and people would just stare at us like heavily, like break their neck to stare, and it was uncomfortable. At first it was like, all right, maybe have a good look. And then afterwards, after about 5 days of being in the city, I'm like, this is really annoying. You go to a restaurant and then they try and put you at the back and the rest of the restaurant is empty. I want to sit on the terrace. You will not be putting me at the back near the toilet. It was a waste of time being so annoyed because these people don't speak English, and if they have negative stereotypes about black people, you're not doing anything to help it. So usually in situations like that where I feel uncomfortable, I'm out. F you, I don't waste my time. But honestly, this has been the minority of my experiences. And the funny thing is about Madrid, at nighttime when most of the young people are hanging out and we're going to the clubs and stuff, people were so friendly. For some reason, it was just during the day with the older crowd. And I don't know what that's about, but I love Spain. My cousin used to live in Marbella. I used to go there a lot. If you follow this channel back in the day, I used to travel to Spain a lot. I have been to Barcelona, which is one of my favorite cities as well, but Madrid just really put me off. The second thing that happened is that you really notice people's ignorance. A lot of people's exposure to black people may just be through MTV and popular culture and stuff like that. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can get a bit irritating. In Spain, I used to get called Rihanna, and I'm like, are you blind? There's literally no similarity. But one thing I will say is that it was usually said in jest. So, hey, Rihanna, Beyonce, Serena, come inside. And I used to be like, what? Depending on their vibe, I would laugh and just shrug it off and just be like, do I look like Rihanna? That is a common thing that happens. And to be fair, this doesn't just happen to Black people, but on the whole, it's not really a bad thing. I've never been like super offended by it. It's just one of those things. There are people who have never seen a Black person in real life before. Like one of my best experiences, and I mentioned this in one of my videos about the perks of traveling alone, was in Croatia, where I met this chef who was really lovely to me, like cooked me good food, made me custom cocktails, we were hanging out. This is cool. And I guess he got a bit comfortable with me and he was like, hey, I have to be honest with you, I have never like hung out with a Black person before. You're my first Black friend. If you think about it, there aren't that many Black people in Eastern Europe. So I mean, while I was on that trip, most of the Black people I saw were travelers, and there wasn't that many of us. There were a few Black guys and even fewer Black girls. So it goes to show this was clearly someone I would definitely want to see again and hang out with when I'm in Croatia, and I was his first Black friend. Another thing that I've noticed while traveling is the fact that I'm a lot more self-aware. I think this comes intrinsically being a Black person and being in certain situations where you fear for your safety, or you're just more self-aware about whether people are being dodgy or being racist. It's an unfortunate reality of where we, how we grow up, and the realities of living in a Western culture where people sometimes can be quite prejudiced. It is what it is, and I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. So it means that when you're traveling, when people vibe is a bit off, you kind of have to question yourself and say, is this person being rude, racist, or bizarre, or they're just strange? Another really annoying thing about traveling as a Black person is that in certain countries, you have to be careful about walking around at night because people think that you're a prostitute. Sad, but true. And this is not everywhere, this is just in certain countries. So for example, I hate to say it, but in Spain, in Marbella, a lot of the prostitutes, at least when I used to go there a lot 7-8 years ago, were Black Nigerian. And it's really annoying because these women are in unfortunate situations. Of course, there are women that choose to be prostitutes, but I remember seeing a documentary growing up about women trafficking and these women getting promised, better lives in Italy and Spain or whatever, and then they get there and they're being pimped out and their passports are being held. So unfortunately, these women are going to be prostitutes and they need to live and they need to service their clients, right? So picture this. You're going down on a strip with your girlfriends, you guys are having fun, you're dressed in the nines, and you walk past women who are prostitutes. That's quite sad. And then you have men come up to you and saying like, hey, do you want to come back with me? Like, how much? And I can't explain how infuriating that is. One, I'm already pissed off about the fact that my people are on the street trapped in these unfortunate circumstances, and then you come up to me and just automatically assume that I'm a prostitute as well. It's infuriating. It's very unfortunate, but it's the reality. So you have to be very firm and say F off if you need to. And usually when I tell people to back off, I've never had a situation where someone's grabbed me or tried to accost me or sexually harass me. Usually they're very sheepish and they're embarrassed by the fact that they have been propositioning someone who is not a prostitute. Another thing that you notice, and I think is definitely a benefit about traveling as a Black person, is that you realize that we're not the same. There's a big difference between a Black African in Paris that was born and raised there and one who, or an African American. It's a very straightforward example. And I think that it's nice that we get to know about each other's cultural differences. Obviously, we're separated for a reason, but I'll give you an example. For me, yes, I was born in England, but I spent a significant part of my childhood in Nigeria. So it meant that I was only exposed to Black people who were like me. So when I moved to England, there was a big difference. I felt like a big separation between not just me as a Black person and people of other races, but also like the Black people that were in my school, because we had different cultural backgrounds, different like entertainment reference points and stuff like that. And now as I get older and I travel a lot, that's one of the things I love the most, learning more about the experiences of Black people in other countries. I find French Africans so interesting. Initially, I was like, how do you ask a Black person where they're from? And they're like, I'm from Paris. Like, me, growing up in Nigeria, like, whenever you ask someone like, hey, where are you from? And they're like, I'm from England. People would just like roll their eyes silently and just be like, you don't know where you're from. And this sounds very unfortunate and very flippant and disrespectful, but that is ignorance. And that's the kind of ignorance that you have when you just know a certain type of group, or you only know people of your type. And now I'm definitely a lot more open-minded. This is the way I used to think of as a kid. It's just a reflection of the way I grew up. And this is why I think that travel is so important, because you get enlightened. You know, you can't just say, oh, those people are ignorant, those people are racist, without also challenging the way that you think and broadening the way that you interact with people. Travel for me is so much fun, and I highly, highly recommend everyone to do a lot more exploration. And I'm really keen on growing this platform into something that encourages women to move abroad wherever they're from, to travel wherever they're from, whatever your background, whatever your race, see the world beyond where you live. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and do check out the website below for tips and tricks about visiting different countries and destinations to explore, and subscribe to the newsletter as well so that you're aware of when I post new videos and content that might be helpful on your journey. Thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know below if you have any specific questions about what it's like to travel while Black. What have been your experiences? Have you been somewhere where you felt like unsafe or it's felt dodgy? Let us know below so we can have a discussion about it. Thank you for watching. Doodles!